Hey everyone, this is Wendy. So I really wanted to continue what we've been doing here for a few weeks, and I want to talk a little bit here more about h.Pylori. I've been getting some comments and people asking me about h.Pylori, how to eradicate it, and then how to also eradicate Candida albicans, which is a yeast. So before I start, I want to tell you all where to find me. If you're local to the Southern California area, I regularly speak and teach nutrition classes in English and Spanish at the Paris School District. And the next class will be November 22nd. It's a Friday. You can find more information about that, about all the dates that I speak on my website, nethersprings.com. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. So if you go to nethersprings.com and then you click on the far right corner, there is a menu, and you can look at the drop down menu and it will say classes. And then when you go on there, you're going to click on that and it will give you all the dates I'm speaking right through to, I think, May 2020, May or June. And all the classes are free. Every person that comes receives a PowerPoint that they get to take home in English and Spanish. There is a translator on site, so Spanish-speaking people will have a headset to receive my teaching also in English. So I think that's a really valuable thing, because if you came to me, you would obviously have to pay for a consultation via phone or in person. The second way that you can reach me is that I am a health coach. I am certified, and because of computers and how great it is now worldwide, I can actually do a consultation with you and we can talk about your health, and really I can health coach you via the computer. The hardest part for most people is you need to download something called Zoom, which is an application that will come onto your computer. You must have a video ability so that I can see you and you can see me, and then we can actually be in real time and we can talk about your personal situation. What I'm going to do here on YouTube is basically talking in generalities. I'm talking about 20 years of experience of working in the trenches, in so many ways with people, but I don't know your particular specific needs and what everything is about you. So that would be a personal consultation. You can find my info again on nethersprings.com there. And you can find the phone number and you can call me or you can email me. And I always like to tell people that my email, let's see if I can put it up here. My email is so let me put this one here for you guys. There's my email. If you would like to get my email and be able to write me, to make an appointment with me, maybe to speak real time, as I said, via the computer or even on the phone. I do phone as well. So I am a health coach, but I also am a clinical nutritionist, and I do functional nutrition, which is not just telling you how much vitamin C is in a red pepper, right? So registered dietitians, and I'm not that. Depending on who you work with nutritionally, always remember that it was nutritionists of some type that made the menu in the hospital. And once you understand that, you'll understand there's such a big, we're all different and we all have different backgrounds, and nutrition is a wide subject. So you really want to work with somebody who understands functional nutrition for the gut, for gut health. Okay, so I got my classes on my website. This is my email. You can always get me. You can set up I'm $70 for an hour. So if you wanted to do work with me for an hour consult, be $70. If you want to put a package together of more than one consult, you can have package prices. If you are in the area and you live near me, as I said, you can come to the school for the classes, and you can even come see me at my office. And all my information, again, let's go back here to my website. It's right there, nethersprings.com. I do want to tell everybody that I do have Facebook, and my Facebook page is right here. And if you would like to go to Facebook, it's the name of it is NutriFunction Nether Springs, and I'll also write that one in because it's probably confusing to remember. So there, if you want to cut and paste from here, there is the Facebook address. But if you want to just go to it, this is how it looks when you go to Facebook, if you happen to be a Facebook member. So you can go and you can follow my page there. And we talk about a lot of things. I do also share other people that I really enjoy, and their articles and their things that play right into what we're going to talk about. So today I want to talk about a couple things. I've had a few people writing me asking me how to completely eradicate H. pylori, and then how to eradicate Candida. And so in the description for this video, what I wanted to do was discuss what do all these things have in common? What do these bugs have in common? So the big thing is what I call the terrain. That means the ground. That means that your gut, your intestinal tract, basically it's like a garden. If you are planting a garden outside your house in the spring and you put flowers in, and if you have too many weeds, your flowers get destroyed or eaten up and the flowers don't show, and eventually your soil is probably already sick and it will get sicker. So the idea of our gut is that we are living, breathing, cellular human beings, and our GI tract, our gut, is directly influenced by our diet, our lifestyle, somewhat the world and what we're breathing and what we're doing and the water we drink, etc. But so our gut gets sick. So one of the questions I wanted to answer was somebody who wrote me and said he had more than one test done for H. pylori. And the first one was 2.4, I think, on his lab. Now, first of all, let me talk about labs. I am certified through biohealth laboratories, and I do use labs, but every single lab has a different way of actually showing their results. So biohealth has their lab results. This man had his. So if he gives me numbers and I don't know what the lab is and I don't look at the actual lab results, it's harder for me to understand. But in generality, when he said the first test was 2.4 and the second one was 4.4 and the doctor told him not to worry about it, I got a big red flag going, well, that sounds higher to me. So let's just talk really quick about why H. pylori is lately, especially if you look online lately here in 2019, a lot of MD type doctors and regular allopathic type doctors are saying now that, well, everybody has it. We're going to leave it in the gut. It's kind of a player. It's just going to be a player. Everybody can have it. I believe one of the reasons that this is happening is that most of the antibiotics today do not eradicate it. So the problem just tends to be, and I've seen enough people like this that I see it regularly, where it comes back. So somebody will take an antibiotic and they will go through the regime that the doctor gives them. And then within 6-8 weeks or somewhere in that area, they'll start feeling bad again, and they'll go back to the doctor and the doctor will retest. So these doctors get weary of putting somebody on something to eradicate it, and it keeps coming back. And sometimes I had one lady who had gone through 6 different antibiotics. And after that, the doctor basically said, we can do nothing for you. You've had this too many times. We can't help you. So I think it becomes really important that we understand the ground. So if you just blast something, if you're going to battle and all you're going to do is blast the bombs over the wall and keep bombing something, and you don't understand that every time you bomb it, you lose more of the healthy aspects, and you're weakening that immune system and you're weakening that person. If you don't understand that, you're only looking to get this one bacteria, you're not seeing that this ground has many bacteria and it has natural players that should be over 400 plus even types of strains of probiotics that should be living in there. So what ends up happening is they bomb everything. You've got barren ground. It looks like Mars. You ever seen pictures of Mars? Yeah, that's your gut. And so after a while, the other thing that happens with doctors so many times is that they will test the person and see that they do have H. pylori. Like this man that wrote me said, I've been tested more than once. And so they're testing them, and then they give them something, and then they never see them again. They never make an appointment saying, now we're going to have you on this protocol, and let's have you come back, and we're going to test again to see if it's gone. I can't tell you over 18 years, 20 years, how many times people have said, I had this, I had that, I had this bacteria, I had this parasite, I had a protozoan. And I'm like, okay. And they showed me the results. And then I'm like, okay, so what was your final, so what happened at the end? And they were always like, well, I don't, they gave me these things to take and I left. And I'm kind of like, and so most people walk away. Now, yes, it can be on the part of the patient. The patient doesn't go back. The doctor doesn't follow up, and the patient never turns up again. So yeah, it's not finished, but neither person, the doctor might think she never came back. He never came back. So that happens. It happens both ways. But I would say the following up issue is a really big deal. And I feel that goes on way too often. So another thing I want to say about H. pylori, if anyone out there is watching this, is if you are taking, let's say an acid blocker, let's say you're taking Prevacid, while taking acid blockers, so many times when people have H. pylori, what will happen is they have a lot of these symptoms, and an average doctor, and sometimes they can't even swallow, and sometimes at night they can't lay down flat in their bed, and they can't even sleep. So the doctor gives them this acid blocker because they get a lot of mucus and stuff that builds up here, and then they have the sternum pain behind the sternum. So they end up on Prevacid or something, and for a while they feel that it's helping them. So what can end up happening is while you're on the Prevacid, and if you go in and have testing done at the same time, your H. pylori will not show up. And I've seen that a lot of times too. So it really takes not being on any medication at all, and it takes being able to see what's going on in the gut. So just be aware that medications can definitely alter test results, and they can definitely alter or even you, like you're thinking, I don't have this anymore, I got retested, but it's so weird because I still have all these symptoms if I don't take my Prevacid, boom, right? So this is why it's all so important. So things can be masked, and they can also be blocked. I mean, I have people changing their diet all the time who are on a lot of drugs, and they just can't get well, and they're doing good with their diet, you know. So prescription drugs a lot of times can block our ability to actually heal our gut. So that's another thing. So I want to quickly just say one thing. There's a lot of similarities between gluten intolerance symptoms, H. pylori symptoms, and Candida symptoms. And what can happen is a person can really have everything. I did. My story is I had all of it. So how might that happen? Well, have you ever played dominoes? You know, those little things? When they start falling, one thing happens after another. And sometimes untangling that, restanding up those dominoes can be, it's time consuming, and most doctors won't do it. So that's why they're going to deal with symptoms only, right? So in my case, I had a lot of yeast. I had H. pylori from years of antibiotics as a child. And then I found out at 40 years old that I was gluten intolerant. So it's weird because so many of these symptoms, they actually overlap each other, right? They overlap. And the problem with that is it's very hard to untangle. So what I have learned as a practitioner over the years is I will usually start with some two fundamental things, okay? The first one is get you off breads and gluten, all gluten-containing foods right away, especially if you're, and I'm going to obviously think pretty quickly, if you have inflammation and if your gut is weak, you're going to have an inflammatory type of bug that likes to live there. So just think, wherever there's inflammation, wherever there's not oxygenation, wherever the body's really having difficulty, there's going to be microbes and bad things that like to live there. I mean, it's like anything. The Disney movies, they like to talk about the circle of life. So, animals, the weakest animals, they get predatored by, predators eat those, and then it's circular. And in our gut, it's really the same thing. We have a weak gut, we have a weak immune system, and then other things come in. I talked last time about being a collector, and I called myself a collector in the late 90s. So I didn't just have bacteria, I didn't just have fungus. Eventually I had viruses. I had Epstein-Barr, I had other viruses that start to come in. So your body starts to collect. And I don't want to get too complicated, and I am going to do a special video on it, but there's something called leaky gut. And leaky gut is literally the door to the gut that opens. It's just like it sounds, leaky gut, microscopic, tiny holes that happen in the gut lining. And it can happen from genetically modified foods. I mean, we know that shreds the gut. That's another whole subject. It can happen from antibiotics and other prescription drugs. You could be taking steroids. You could be taking maybe a lot of Tylenol, Advil. Maybe your diet is a lot of trans fats, and you eat out at every single meal. So all of these things do damage to the gut. So what comes first, we've talked about this a million times, the chicken or the egg, right? Candida starts growing, can poke holes in the gut. Or does the gut already have loose, you've got leaky gut, you've got it's not integrally tight, these junctions, and so things open up and then things get in, and then it happens. So, practitioners, we talk about this, the chicken or the egg, what came first? I think it can be many things. I know for me as a child, I was on antibiotics from about the age of 5 and 6 on. I was on antibiotics almost over 20 years off and on. So for me, my gut was just, trashed. So anyway, I was talking to you right now briefly about H. pylori, Candida, gluten intolerance, so many things that after a while, we just end up being a person who has so many problems. So all of those three things, a functional medicine practitioner is going to think, well, you've got SIBO. So what is SIBO? You have 23 feet small intestine. SIBO is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. But what if you have what if they want to just treat your SIBO with an antibiotic for bacteria? And what if you have SIFO? SIFO is small intestine fungal overgrowth. And I've hardly ever seen a person that has H. pylori and gut problems who doesn't also have yeast. So be very careful when you treat that H. pylori with an antibiotic that you don't cause the fungus and cause the SIFO to grow like crazy. And this is why H. pylori will come back, because it loves to party. It loves to live with other bacteria and other things. I mean, again, we're talking about a terrain, and wherever there's damage in the terrain, and whether there's a lack of good stuff, you're always going to have bad stuff that likes to grow together. So I just want to just quickly, if you don't know what H. pylori is, I'm going to say it right now. The H. pylori is a bacteria. Okay, Candida is a fungus. So again, we're dealing with different things, and it's why it's so important to look at your treatment. How you treat this condition really matters, because you're not just looking to bomb out the H. pylori, you're looking to maintain some integrity in that gut. And the only way you're going to do that is to kind of have a plan. You've got to have a protocol. You've got to have a way that you're first of all going to kill the things, and then you have to restore that gut. Now, before I start, I want to say this. Your diet and how you eat is mandatory in all of this. If you're going to be on a protocol and you're not feeding your body the right foods, or unknowingly feeding the condition you're trying to kill, you're going to have a war. You're going to have a battle, and you'll have headaches, and you'll be very sick. So I talked last time also about adjunctive therapies that are so valuable, and that can be enemas, coffee enemas, colonics. I talked about ozone therapy. I talked about so many other things, and saunas, skin brushing, so many adjunctive therapies. On my website, again, below here, heathersprings.com. You will also go on there and find articles I've written. I wrote articles there on skin brushing. I've got articles on ozone. I've got articles on Candida and how all these things. So you can also go there. Okay, so I just want to quickly go over H. pylori. It's a bacteria, and all I'm going to do quickly is read off typical symptoms if you have it. Now remember, some of these can overlap. Some of these can overlap into gluten intolerance. Some of this, I had some of these, and they can overlap into having a fungal overgrowth. So again, this is where working personally with a practitioner is going to be so valuable for you. So you can have tests done, and they can actually get to know you as a person and what your particulars are. But I'm going to read some of the symptoms of H. pylori. So the first one is abdominal pain, and it never really goes away, and you always have pain abdominally. And for women, it can be doubly bad when you have menstrual cycle on top of that, and it's pretty painful. Okay, second is acid reflux and heartburn. And as I said, it's usually behind the sternum, and it's pain. Third one is anemia. Quite often, if somebody is anemic, what you really want to do if you have anemia is get out and get tested right away for H. pylori, because it's such a classic player. Now, I want to say again, gluten intolerance. Again, people are anemic. It's a very high sign of not just celiac, but under the radar type gluten intolerance. You can also be anemic. So we're going to talk a little about this. So important to know what we're dealing with. Okay, third one is bad breath. I think it was Willie Nelson in one of his songs who talked about kerosene breath, breath like kerosene, and that's very strong. So it's a big sign also of anemia. So can be a backed up colon. I mean, long-term constipation and other issues can also give you really bad breath. Okay, bloating and excessive gas. Now, again, so a sign of gluten intolerance can also be bloating and excessive gas. And I will say even really bad candida can produce that. I will say another thing. You eat a lot of soy, any form of soy, you're probably looking at a lot of bloating and gas with soy, eating a lot of soy, edamame and tofu and everything people eat. It's a big one. So again, we want to rule things out, right? We want to be tested. We want to know for sure. So chest pain and pain between the shoulder blades at the back. You've got chest pain, first of all, but then you've got this never ending between the shoulder blades pain, okay? Constipation and diarrhea. So here's kind of what's weird as a colon therapist for all these years. Things can manifest different in people. Some people are gluten intolerant or have H. pylori, and they have the runs constantly. They just have diarrhea. It never ends, and it's bright orange and yellow in color, and it smells very chemically, like chemicals. But other people are constipated. They never go. They're going once a week. So this can, again, be person. It can be different depending on the person. Another one is gastritis. I put this in here because if you went to an MD doctor, you would probably get sent to a specialist who is a gastritis specialist. So that word, if you hear that word, you have gastritis. Another one for H. pylori. Nausea and vomiting. So when I had it really bad, I had been on years as a small child on antibiotics for just many years. I didn't know that when I vomited a lot, so I'm going to get a little graphic here, you guys. I had never-ending migraine headaches, which is a big sign of H. pylori, but it's also a big sign of gluten intolerance, and it can be also with non-alcoholic fatty liver. It can be with liver issues. It can be with candida. So again, see, it's so important. So, but anyway, so when the vomiting happens with H. pylori, what you will quite often see, it looks like coffee grounds. So if you've ever seen coffee grounds out of a pot, and it looks like this brownish black little things that, are coffee grounds, that's kind of how the vomit looks. If you quite often get that nausea and vomiting in the morning when you get out of bed and you don't want to eat, it's usually a pretty big sign of H. pylori as well. Or, as I said, a taken over gut. A gut with leaky gut with lots of yeast can do that as well. Fatigue and low energy. So fatigue and low energy is a really big deal. Never feeling like you ever have energy. Okay, always fatigued, pushing through. But you have that pushing through and fatigue and everything, along with the stomach pain, the abdominal pain, the pain between your shoulder blades, the pain behind the sternum. I mean, you can see how it's a body-wide situation, and you can get misdiagnosed. They'll tell you maybe you have arthritis, or maybe you've had an injury, and maybe you need to be on these painkillers here. So it's so important to get the diagnosis, right? I already said migraines. Another one's PMS. I talked a little minute ago about, if you have these conditions and you're going to have your monthly cycle, it's going to be just a really painful thing for you every month. So many women I've met end up with hysterectomies because of other underlying conditions that were never looked at or dealt with. Okay, so sinus problems, recurring sinus problems. As I said in the last video, we now know from the Mayo Clinic, that this is a common thing. So many times sinus infections are fungally based. So you really got to deal with that gut, and you really got to heal it, and you got to kill off some of these bugs. Again, sinus problems coming from the gut. Teeth problems, lots of gum and teeth problems coming from the gut, right? We got to keep looking at this gut that plays into even our ability to think. Alzheimer's, neurological disorders, you got to keep looking at that gut, right? Okay. So skin, I want to make a quick note here. Somebody I follow on Facebook who I just love, she's great, and I highly respect her, as a practitioner. She was talking about the rosacea. It's kind of like it goes over the nose. It looks like a butterfly. So we get this kind of, what do they call it? Urticaria or rosacea butterfly look here to the cheeks and the nose. And quite often we'll see that with lupus, and actually we could say any autoimmune disorder can have that. But it's highly common to see it with H. pylori. Just go on Google and do a search for H. pylori and rosacea. Okay, I'll tell you guys how to spell rosacea. Oops. Okay, there it is. That's what you want to look on Google, right? Put H. pylori with that and start looking at what they say. So this is quite a common occurrence. We have a problem with the butterfly over the face and anemia, and you got H. pylori. So you can start seeing, if you got anemia, you're not even going to be absorbing your food, right? I mean, everything's getting taken away from you because you've got all these conditions going on. Okay, so the next one will be sleep problems and never sleeping through the night and just being up all night. I mean, really having big problems sleeping. Weight gain or weight loss. See, again, it comes back to the individual. And I want to say that even with gluten intolerance, people can get really skinny and they can get really bloated, the bloated tummy and feeling really ill and not being able to lose weight no matter what. So weight gain or weight loss, again, comes back to the individual, right? We're going to keep saying that here because what if you have gluten intolerance as well? What if we have some other issues? So I'm going to also talk about a little bit about autoimmune conditions that associate with H. pylori here real quick. Cancer. So because H. pylori is a bacteria and because it can live in the esophageal area all the way down, and it can really, it can cause, if undealt with, this is why the man that wrote me here and said, I've been tested more than one time. My doctor said, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. What if it causes esophageal cancer? What if it causes cancer in your stomach? All right, this is a bacteria. This is a bug who's not going to go away. It's going to continue to grow, right? So we really have to look at this. So that can be a cancer causer. It can even be associated with osteoporosis. It can lead to a condition called hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid. And when stomach acid is low, the breaking apart of proteins and the release of minerals like calcium and magnesium is compromised, right? If the body cannot digest food and absorb nutrients properly, calcium and magnesium levels can drop. Of course, calcium and magnesium are essential for bone health, and deficiencies can lead to a reduction of bone density. You see how this all ties in here? H. pylori causes chronic inflammation in the stomach and intestine, which causes an elevation in the hormone called cortisol released from our adrenal glands. High levels of cortisol actually cause the bone to be broken down because cortisol is normally anti-inflammatory. But we've got a problem, we've got a bug. You understand? So in addition, when cortisol is too high, progesterone becomes too low. Progesterone is needed to build bone. To summarize, H. pylori leads to osteoporosis because it's indirectly leading back to a lack of minerals in the body that are the building blocks for bone. You see how we can't let this thing be. We can't just say it's no big deal. Now, having read you all these symptoms here, these are all symptoms. And by the way, H. pylori causes ulcers. I have to say that real quick. Ulcers were the reason we actually found out that H. pylori was even involved. So in the 80s and the 70s, lots of people had ulcers. Your grandparents may have had ulcers. It was in the 80s where they said, oh, this is caused by a bacteria. It's called H. pylori. So the first discovery was that it caused ulcers. So we know that. Ulcers left long enough can cause cancer. We also know that. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disorder is also something, and we know now accumulating evidence has implicated H. pylori infection in extra gastrointestinal diseases, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and liver disease. So recently, there's been a special focus on H. pylori as a risk factor for the development of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And right now, I mean, we're having young children who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the main component and reason why is the high fructose corn syrup and the diets that everybody are eating, right? And the trans fats. So I just want to point out that usually, you know, we're looking to H. pylori having a part that it plays in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So look at this. I mean, it's even there. Now, earlier in this, I said to you guys, you must be tested anyway, because what if you've got a liver problem from something like Giardia, which I have seen? So it wasn't H. pylori, it wasn't all these things, and this person ended up having Giardia for years, you know. So it's so important. I even worked with a veterinarian, and he's a large animal vet, and he ended up having a lot of waterborne protozoans because he was constantly putting catheters in and different things with large animals, and he had this condition. So there can be other things. So I think it's very important that we understand what's going on underneath. I can only talk in generalities, as I've said here before. So acute appendicitis is the final thing I want to mention. And I really got this off the PubMed sites, and I got it off of, you know, when you go online and you actually check what lab results and then they have actually shown. But the abstract said that H. pylori has been found in the upper GI tract. It is incriminated as a factor in various pathological conditions, and they now are seeing it with acute appendicitis. So it's very possible that H. pylori is actually in the appendicitis attack, and possibly when they've had to remove it. I've even wondered personally about the gallbladder, because I think the gallbladder could also probably, these things migrate and they move around the body. So I really want to say it's so vital to find out what's going on. Get somebody who's a functional nutritionist, a functional medicine person who will actually get to root cause here. The reason I wanted to bring in Candida to this is that I want to say again, bugs never live alone. Think of a garden, as I said in the beginning of this, things live together in a garden. It's a soil. Our gut is like that. So if you've got H. pylori, I guarantee you it's not living alone, right? So H. pylori takes over where there's no good bacteria. So we're looking at a microbiome, a bigger condition. So I know this is going on really long, and I didn't plan on this going long. So I'm going to do another part. I'm going to do part 2 tomorrow, and I'm going to continue this because I don't want you guys to be sitting here going, when is she going to get to the treatment? So I just wanted to say a little bit. I told you that all these conditions overlap. So I want to tell you really quickly that a gluten intolerance, and I want to tell you guys where I got this quiz, because this is somebody you want to follow online, and his name is Dr. Peter Osborne, and you want to follow him online, and this is actually his questionnaire about the gluten intolerance quiz. He's on Facebook. He's also got a wonderful website. I love Dr. Osborne because he will do the genetic test for gluten intolerance, not the testing. So many of these tests that we do, you have to be eating wheat. You have to be eating it to have the antibodies in your blood. You have to be actually, going through all this to take your testing. And then we can still get false negatives all the time, or false positives, either one. So anyway, he does a genetic test. It's like $300, really worth getting done to find out. So I'm going to tell you really quick here how this overlaps with H. pylori so often. So here is a gluten intolerance, right? Gut symptoms: craving baked goods, craving high sugar foods. Sounds like yeast too, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like having a yeast condition? Frequent intestinal bloating or gas, especially after eating. IBS, acid reflux, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, frequent nausea or vomiting. Did I not just read all this to you? That was also there for H. pylori. Do you guys see this problem? You might think, well, I don't have a gluten problem. Really? Let's talk about 3 things that people eat every day, right? Pasta, cereal, bread. Okay. What is a big sign for gluten intolerance? Iron deficiency anemia. What is it for H. pylori? Same thing. Okay, your head and nervous system symptoms: you're going to have frequent headaches, especially migraines, sinus congestion, migraine headaches, vertigo. Vertigo is a big one for gluten intolerance. Poor memory, difficulty recalling words, brain fog, poor concentration. You've been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, especially as a child. With children, you must be so careful, right? Depression, anxiety, neuropathy, irrational irritability. And there's a wonderful book I told you guys about a few videos ago called The Missing Diagnosis. And so many of those people that Dr. Truss was working with, they were diagnosed with schizophrenia. Got them all, fixed the Candida, got them off of bread and wheat, and boom. So you've really got to look at these conditions. So muscle and joint symptoms when you have a gluten intolerance are being diagnosed with arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, frequent joint pains, chronic muscle aches, migrating joint pain, frequent muscle spasms, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, bone pain, growing pains. I mean, are you with me on this? This is just gluten intolerance. This is finding this out. Fatigue, inability to lose weight, infertility, history of miscarriages and spontaneous abortions. Gluten intolerance, I'm telling you, it is one of the most, with fertility, with PMS, with people having hysterectomies. I mean, really, the endocrine system and gluten intolerance, it's a really big deal for women, especially. Thyroid disease, got a lot of thyroid issues, and autoimmune thyroid Graves' disease. Please, Hashimoto's, please look into gluten intolerance and have as I said, prefer the genetic testing for it. Okay, so PCOS, polycystic ovary disease, endometriosis, so common with a gluten intolerance, right? Immune systems would be chronic UTIs, urinary tract infections. I also see that with a Candida overgrowth. I see that with people who have a lot of E. coli bacteria. So, you've heard about taking D-mannose, which is a wonderful thing that we can get in a health food store to help flush the E. coli out of the area where you're chronically getting the UTI infections, right? So that's a great deal. Asthma, vaginal, oral, or nail bed yeast infections that really come from having this gluten intolerance. So your body's constantly always imagine the body's inflammatory, the gut's inflammatory, what's going to happen? All the bad stuff comes in. That's just how it is, okay? So skin problems would be fever, blisters, or mouth ulcers, skin rash, eczema, psoriasis, all of these things, vitiligo, all of these things can be caused, again, by this gluten intolerance. All you got to do is go on YouTube and start looking at skin rashes caused from gluten. It's pretty enlightening. Again, that butterfly many times can be there with a gluten intolerance because people also have H. pylori and they work together, right? So what is an autoimmune disease? I mean, if they tell you have lupus and you have all these other symptoms, could it be that it's possible your lupus or your MS first started with some of these other problems? Maybe you had H. pylori. Maybe you've got an undiagnosed gut of bugs. You understand? You can see how when you don't treat root cause, when you're constantly dealing with symptoms and you're just giving people for symptoms, you see what happens here. And we just become collectors, right? So other internal diseases and problems that come along with being gluten intolerant, a big one is gallbladder problems. Gallbladder and liver problems is huge, huge, okay? Elevated liver enzymes, non-alcoholic fatty liver, autoimmune hepatitis, lymphoma, platelet disorders. Platelet disorders is kind of a big deal when you're gluten intolerant because it so affects your blood and your ability, even your antibodies, right? So I read those, and then I wanted to just quickly also say how Candida overlaps. What are some of the things that can cause a Candida overgrowth? Let's look at this here. Oh, all this antibiotic use. Oh, Oh, have you ever in your life taken broad spectrum antibiotics? Have you ever taken birth control pills? Have you been pregnant one or more times? Do you crave sugar? I mean, can you all see these overlapping situations? So this is part one. I'm going to end it because it's gone on too long. And then tomorrow I'm going to bring in part two, and we're going to start talking about treatment. Again, I want to tell you, I am a health coach. I am an ADAPT certified health coach. And this particular certification that I have is through Chris Kresser Institute. So Chris Kresser, if you know who he is, wrote a lot of books on the paleo cure, which is the diet that he really got well himself and recommended. And I also got certified through him. So I am certified as a health coach. And as I said, I can coach you. I can coach you just with emotional things. I can also coach you with, we're talking here about diet and lifestyle issues. So anyway, I want to go back to my website. First of all, NutriFunction Nether Springs is my Facebook page. I want you to also know that my Facebook page looks like this if you want to cut and paste. But my website is right here, nethersprings.com. I will see you guys tomorrow, and I hope this is not too long. And we'll talk really soon again. Okay, bye-bye.